And so this morning, we're just going to spend a few moments just looking at a story found in the Gospel of Luke. And it's a message called From Here to Home. Right? And it's talking about this idea. Jesus is talking to a group of people. Some of them believe in him, some of them don't. And so he's talking to them, and he's giving them these parables. And Jesus would often do this. He would use parables are often described as earthly... No, I can't remember how it's described. But anyway, an earthly reality with a heavenly meaning, right? So it's something tangible that we kind of know and experience here on earth, right? So he's telling stories that people understand. And then sometimes he would even tell stories that would shock people, right? And this is what he does today. He's going to tell the story in Luke 15, near the end of Luke, that's a story that's going to cause people that are listening to it can kind of be shocked by the story that he's telling. Right, and it's supposed to do that because it's trying to highlight this reality. And this is what I really want to highlight. It's the fact that God is in active pursuit of you so that you may know his love for you. Right? God is in active pursuit of you because he wants you to know his love for you. Right? He is seeking you. And in the mere fact that you're sitting in these seats this morning, whether you're somebody that normally sits here on a Sunday or somebody that isn't, this is God's pursuit of you. Right? I heard it when I was younger that God is wooing you, and that's kind of a weird phrase to use. It relates to God, but what he's doing is he's trying to draw your heart back to himself. And so he uses many different ways to be able to do this, and today we're going to see that he does it through the art of storytelling, right? As he tells the story that's here. And so we're going to walk through this story, and then at the end I have just 2 points that I want to bring up. But let's start in Luke chapter 15. It's going to be in verse 11, and you're going to see the story behind me. Right, so Jesus tells a story. He says, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. And so the story opens up with this picture of a father and 2 sons. And the younger son, we don't know how old he is, but my assumption is a teenager, because that's usually when they start do that questioning parents thing, right? So maybe 15, 16, 17 years old, and he goes to his dad and he says, "Give me my inheritance now." When do you normally receive inheritance? It's usually when the parent has died. Yeah. So by saying this statement, he's in essence saying to his dad, "I kind of wish you were dead and just gave me your stuff now." Right? And this idea would, as it should, shock us a little bit. Right, if any one of our children came to us and asked us that question, you know what, if you can just give me like 30 grand, and then I'll just be on my way, that would be great. Or maybe he's, a really wealthy dad. He's like, give me $250,000 and I'll be on my way. Whatever it may be here, but he wants a large amount of money, and he does. And the thing that should shock them when he hears that, but even more so, the second part of this, the very last sentence. So he divided his property among them. It would shock us, it should shock us even more, the fact that not that the son asked it, but that the father gave it. Right? In this story, what we're going to see is some characters. In this part of the story, there's 2 characters, primarily. It is the character of the father and the son. And the father represents God in this story, or Jesus. It represents him. The son represents us. And so in this, what he does and what he says to the Father is what many of us say to God. They say, "You know what, God, I want you to bless me. I want you to give me good life. I want you to give me wealth. I want you to give me prosperity. I want you to give me all those things. But you know what? I don't actually want you. I don't want to have to listen to your rules. I don't want to have to live in your house. I don't want to have to have anything to do with you. Just give me the good blessings, the good stuff, and let me go on my way." And what's crazy about God is God loves us so much that he says, okay. That he actually does bless us. The fact that you have breath in your lungs right now is God's blessing upon you, that you are alive, right? And so he does this, even the fact that they are rejecting him in that moment. Right? So the story continues. It says in verse 13, it says, "Not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had, and he set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living." Basically, he partied it up, right? And after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. Right, so you see the son, he goes away from his social construct that was around him, his family, his support system, and he goes somewhere else, and he tries to kind of live it up like a king, live it up like a prince, and he has this entourage that's following him. You can kind of just picture this. So we are reading this story like we read stories, right? We're just reading the words on the page. When Jesus spoke this story, he would be speaking it with pauses, with emphasis, and allowing people to kind of respond to the story. So I believe at this point, he probably just paused a little bit and let people kind of murmur among them, like, how could the son do this? Or does he not know that he needs the security of his father? He is not smart enough to be able to handle the blessings that he was given at the very beginning, or all these things. But the son gets to this point of his life, and he's spent everything, and then there's a famine. Then trouble, then tragedy comes. And this is often what takes place in our lives, is we have good gifts from God, and we can kind of live it up for a moment until there's this point where life reaches this crisis moment and we feel squeezed. We, like the son, are in need. Right? And sometimes we try to ignore that need. We try to act as if the need doesn't exist. And so we numb it through different ways, whether that is entertainment. We try to binge on Netflix, or we try to drug it, alcohol and drugs. Or we try various ways to just push it away out of our mind because we don't want to think about the need, because if we think about it, it's like pushing on a wound. It hurts more. And so the son is at this low point of his life, and the fact that he recognizes his need is almost a good thing in and of itself. But the story continues. It says in verse 15, it says, so he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to the fields to feed pigs. And so if you know anything about Jewish culture despised pigs. They thought they were dirty, unclean animals. They wouldn't have anything to do with pigs. So the mere fact that he was among the pigs is a disgraceful thing for him to experience, but that's where he was sent. He was sent to these pigs, and he longed, verse 16, he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one would give him anything. Right? This huge contrast between him being at his father's house and asking his father for everything, and his father gives him everything, and yet here he is in the world trying to do it on his own, and he's just looking for scraps from the table of pigs. And nobody gives them anything. Or the reality is that in the world, the things that we need for life will not be given to us because everybody else is trying to hoard them themselves. God is totally different in that, where he wants to bless and he wants to give and he wants us to be fruitful. But in the world, we're going to find no help. No one gave him anything. And so the story continues, verse 17. He says, when he came to his own senses, he said to himself, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and I'll go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and he went to his father. The best thing that the son has done yet in this story is come to his senses. He realized his need. He realized that he was in a place of starving to death. He was facing death if he did not return to the Father. And so he says that, I'm going to go back to my father, and I'm going to say that I've sinned against him and against heaven. Right? And he said that at least just make me like one of your servants. I'll be like one of the lower people in your household. So he gets up and he goes. He starts to turn back. Right, oftentimes in Scripture, this turning is referred to the idea of repentance, the fact that we're taking our old life and saying, no way anymore. That this consequence, this end, this needing, this leading to death, I want to be done with. And I'm going to turn and I'm going to go to home. I'm going to go back to where God has called me to be. Right, so he goes and he starts making his way. Verse 19 says, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son, and he threw his arms around him, and he kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. My favorite part of the story is the son is rehearsing his script as he's walking towards his homeland. Right, and he's thinking in his head, I want to reach my father. I'm going to say this. I'm going to look to try to apologize, to look for forgiveness, to tell him how poorly I acted, and this is all a horrible act, and just make me one of your slaves. And the father kind of runs to him, hears his statement, and almost like goes right past him, just says, "No, you're not going to be a hired slave. You're not going to be a servant. You're going to be a son again. I'm going to put a ring on your finger. I'm going to give you sandals for your feet, and I'm going to give you a robe. You're just coming back as a slave. You're coming back as my son. Right? And let's celebrate you." In this wonderful story, we're going to see two things that I think are going to highlight that point to the reality of God trying to show his love for us. But before we go through those, I do want to, because we have kids both with us this morning, and I love watching kids' videos, I have a small recap of this story that helps give us a picture of what this looked like for us. And this video really gets us to feel the part of this story. So let's watch this together. All right, that story, a few things that when I watched it in my office this week, there's two things that really pulled my heart into the story. One was the pain of the father, and the second was the rejoicing of the father. Right, and I think this story, one of the things that highlights that sometimes we don't realize is that in our rebellion from God, it doesn't just hurt us, it actually hurts God. Right? He desires for us to know him, to be in a relationship with him, and so our rejection of him hurts. Right, so that is why I believe he's in pursuit of making his love of us known. All right, so I think there's just going to be two things I'm going to talk about as we wrap up our morning this morning. The first is going to be the idea of looking and running. Looking and running. In verse 20, it says, "But while he was still away long off, his father saw him." So as the son was returned back home, right? We don't know how far off the far off is, but I kind of have this picture as if it really wasn't that far of a travel for the son to start making his way home. I believe that his father had never stopped looking. Right, so I don't know the length of time the son was gone, but every day the father was looking. The fact that he saw him meant that he was looking. He was always looking for the son to return home. And one of the first ideas of God is he is always looking at us. Looking at us, not because of the fact that he's trying to judge us. A lot of times people think God is looking down at us as a fact of like bringing judgment or condemnation or shame or guilt. He is not looking because of that. He's looking because he wants to run towards us and bless us. His intent of looking down isn't to bring guilt, it's to bring forgiveness. It's a total different thought than most people think. And so he saw him afar off, and so he started to run towards him. It said, filled with compassion, he ran to his son. And one thing to note, that we don't live in ancient Israel. I don't think any of us do. If you do, welcome to the future. But those men at that time did not run. Now, it doesn't mean they couldn't run or that they didn't exercise or those things like that, but typically they wore a tunic, so they wore something that was like all the way down to their feet. It was actually humiliating to show your legs as a man. I don't know why, but it was part of that culture. Right there. So to run with a large tunic on would be very difficult. Right? I have never ran in a dress myself, but I assume that running in a dress is not an easy thing to do, right? Because you have it all the way down. So the fact that he was running means he had to lift up his coat or his tunic and expose his legs, which may to our culture doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but to their culture was everything. So the fact that he did that, what he did, he was willing to humiliate himself, to put himself in a place of humility and humiliation against culturally for the sake of running to his son. That's a huge deal when you think of what Jesus did for us. What he did, he came to the earth willing to humiliate himself to the point of even death. He didn't need to die. He didn't deserve to die, and yet he faced death on our behalf to humiliate himself so then we could be saved. Which leads us to this next part. So he runs to the son, and then we see saving and rejoicing. Or he says, quick, he says to his attendants, the people that were following around him, probably lagging behind because he ran. Or he says, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And he says quick, not just to be able to say quick. This is not about dressing up and blinging out his son. This isn't the intentionality. He isn't worried about his clothing. He's worried about his life. Again, another cultural thing that we're not aware of is at that time, if a child asked for his inheritance early, left his home, squandered it, and returned back home or to the village, they were due basically possibly death or at least persecution because of the type of life they chose. So culturally, this son of his was supposed to be attacked by the village people. So the fact that he ran to him saved him, one, because of the fact that nobody else could. And so he quickly, before the city could stone him, he put a finger on a ring on his finger. In essence, he said, no, I'm restoring him back into his sonship. He's not just a commoner among us, he's restored. And so this other aspect of what God does is he humiliates himself by coming down as a human to be able to die on a cross, to be able to pay for our sin, and then he restores us. He puts us back in right fellowship, the way we were supposed to be, the way we were created to be. Right? He restores us, and he stops judgment from coming towards us. He saves us. And then the last thing he says, let's have this feast and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is now alive again. He was lost and he's found. And so one of the great things that God does, and actually more than one time in Scripture does it say that the God of heaven rejoices over us, celebrates over us. There's even one verse that says that as humans, we entertain angels. Entertain as in like they delight in us. Right? One of the things that God does and displays his love for us is the fact that he actually delights in us. He delights in the things that we do in our life. We can make God happy. And that changes people's thoughts. Many people think that all we do is make God angry, upset, and frustrated because we don't live according to the way he wants us to live. And that's not the way he does things. He actually is happy over us, and he loves us. He's willing to run for us and to save us. And so just this as a conclusion, to remind you of the purpose is that God is in active pursuit of you, so that you may know of his love for you. That it's an active pursuit of you, so that you may know his love for you. And his greatest demonstration of love really is the cross. And Romans talks about this as, but God demonstrates his love for us in this, that while we are still sinners, Christ died for us. And what that verse means is while you are saying, God, you know what, I actually don't love you. God, you know, actually, I think I kind of hate you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I don't want to have to listen to you. I don't want to have to obey you. I don't want to have to follow you. I don't want to have to do any of those things. Right? In that response, God says, you know what? Okay, I'm still going to die for you. I'm still going to demonstrate my love to such an extent that even if you reject me, I still love you. Right? And I will die for you. Right? The Father's love for the Son was displayed in his constant looking for the Son and the constant readiness of the possibility to save his Son and rescue his Son and redeem his Son. And so God demonstrates his love for you because he died for you. And my question is, will you return to God and start your journey home? Now, the reality is that really only takes one step because God has ran all the other steps. And he has made it possible and very easy for us to turn to you. Just like Mike Fisher said in that video, he said, it's easy and it's free. All you have to do is believe.